because I deal with all kind of kids. I do. You can only imagine how difficult it is at times because they have been programmed. And I am not here to tell them what to believe. You have to know who you are. And that's very difficult because every day you're changing. Every day you're changing. See, whatever happened academically before today really doesn't matter. It's what's going to happen moving forward, because you have to have the mindset that you are future oriented.
Yes.
And you have to relate back to another word which is called time prosperity. You have to utilize your time correctly, because we want to build what? Power, which requires work over time. And with that being said, it is 3:10, and our beloved session is complete.
All right, we live. Everything looks good.
Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Well, you know, one thing I would tell anybody in the world is that if you really want to be successful, you have to have and understand a very simple equation. And that physics equation deals with the word power. And power is just simply work over time. And it seems very simplistic, but if you don't put the work in, no matter what you're doing, over a period of time, you're never going to be successful. One thing that always concerned me growing up was that why does it seem like Caucasian or white Americans were having more fun than black folks? And I often got accused of trying to be white. Well, I'm too damn black to ever try to be white. You know, I enjoy being black. I just really wanted to understand some of the truths that have been taught, or better yet, some of the lies. And so it forced me to look at how we play games in America. Oftentimes, we hear the scenario where they claim that the white man is playing chess and the black man is playing checkers. One thing that I do understand with either game is that you have an opponent. And when you're dealing with chess, the thing that disturbed me the most was, why do the white pieces always get to move first? So I never desired to play chess. I learned and discovered in life that most people are not playing chess or checkers. Indeed, they're simply playing Simon Says. They get up in the morning, same time, do the same thing, complain about just about everything. They are told what to do. They don't make any decisions for themselves. And I said I never wanted to play that game either. So scratch out chess, scratch out checkers, and most definitely scratch out Simon Says. So what do I want to play? Well, I want to play Sudoku. Sudoku is a strategic game that requires one to put their numbers in the right place. And it goes back to my power statement. Putting my time in the right place, my efforts in the right place over a period of time through what I call practice. You know, practice is a very powerful word that we need to really understand and to address. You know, practice is something that we do. It's a verb. And it's a physical act. So if you were to just take a minute and look at the word practice, just stare it down. In the middle of the word practice is the word act. When we look at the word act, it's a verb which means to do. You have to do something when you're practicing to be great. Whether you become a criminal or become a legend in your own right, you have to still practice doing it until you master that skill. So when you snatch out the word act out of the word practice, you're left with the word price. And I often ask students, what price are you willing to pay to be great? I said, but in being great, you have to understand the P and the R in practice, which I entitle the public relations. How do you relate to the public? How does the public relate back to you? And if you have poor character and a bad attitude, nobody wants to deal with you. So you just messed up your P and your R. Because at the end of the word practice is the word ice, and it can be very cold out here. Like the 3-letter word ICE, you're looking at a solid, a liquid, and a gas. But if you want to be someone who is striving for excellence and building your power, you must put the time in and practice. Put the work in and get it done. Because a verb is simply an action word. It means to do something. we are all someone's child. No matter how old you are birthed by someone. And the birth process is something that grants us all power, because I like to joke about what I call the top sperm. You know, my father, this pharmaceutical sales rep, and my mother, this domesticated woman who ran her own business, as I would say. They came together in a sense of what we call intimacy. And mom and dad got together, and next thing you know, I am swimming like the legendary Michael Phelps inside of my mom's fallopian tube. About 13 million microscopic sperm cells competing to fertilize the egg first. But during this process, it was two of us attempting to fertilize my mother's eggs. And I had a twin brother who didn't make it. His name was Zack. So from the onset of my life, the struggle was real. But, you know, oftentimes we find ourselves not knowing how to like our life and live it in the right manner. Because in the word like, in the center, but yet the third letter is K. And I like to think that K stands for kindness, having a kindred spirit. But most importantly, you got to know yourself. Growing up and often being teased by the complexion of my skin, my melanin, I was called Black Zack. Because of the size of my head, I was called big-headed. And I didn't like being black. And I didn't like having a big head. But my grandmother's always told me that God gave me a big head because he had big things for me to do. I later learned later in life that she was lying. I got a better yet, I have a big head because my father has a big head, and my father has a big head. And genetically, I had no control of the size of my head, nor the complexion of my skin. And so for me, when I look at that life, I recognize that I must like my life and know how to live. So when I look at the word life, I find the third letter also is the letter F, which I define as family and fortune and family and friends. But with all those F's, we must understand forgiveness. So I learned how to forgive my parents. I learned how to have the fortitude. I built a family. I wasn't always the perfect man or the best husband or best dad, but I was that guy. And I recognize that people always say that we only have one life to live, or we only live once. And the truth of the matter is not that. We live once. We live every day. We only die once. So what would your life say about you? And then I learned how to live. After I begun to like my life, I had to live. And the third letter in live happens to be a V, which means how would I be virtuous? How would I increase my value through my power, which is work over time? And then I had to have a vision. And the vision that I had was to leave the world better than I found it. I know it sounds somewhat cliche, but in the end of the day, I always believed that I had something inside of myself that will make me great and help me leave things behind, nuggets, an inheritance for my kids, not necessarily money, but inheritance of wealth and knowledge and power for my babies. To teach my kids how to be more human-like, how to respect themselves, how to love on themselves. And that's going to be my inheritance for those I love. So I had to learn how to like my life and live. The funny thing about the word live, L-I-V-E, being that I'm dyslexic, is that I see the word evil, live, L-I-V-E, backwards is E-V-I-L. And to have lived a good life, if I took the word lived and run it backwards, it's spelled devil. So I have to know when the adversary is coming up against me. But most importantly, I must understand and know who I am as a person, as a man, what God created me to be. I attended a HBCU, which we refer to as a historically black college and university. And that school is called Wilberforce University, the oldest HBCU AME school in America. Ironically enough, it was named after a gentleman by the name of Wilberforce, which happened to be of the lighter pigmentation. And I learned so much attending a HBCU that I don't understand how some people go to these PWIs that look like I, because there was nothing like attending a HBCU. You know, when I think about the term HBCU, and I'm saying it a lot because I think about the heart of the HBCU. You know, the heart is what gives us life and allow us to do great things. What's inside your heart? We must take care of our hearts like we must take care of our HBCUs. The B in HBCU to me became the brain. Because I teach for a living, I want more people to understand how their brain function, that amygdala that deals with fight or flight. But I do believe that other F is freeze. You have to freeze and think about it. Because in a very, very short time frame, you will decide what you're going to do when you place yourself in a situation. The C deals with choices. The most powerful thing that you have and own is your choices. Everything in life requires making a choice. And if you continue to make bad choices, then your life is going to be predicated on the choices that you make, or better yet, the choices that you don't make. And then you must have inside of you that U, which means to be unrelentless. You're not going to quit in spite of what happened to you as a child. As I sit back and I think about childhood, I later learned about something that CDC referred to as adverse childhood experiences. Now, growing up, I never even heard the terminology. And what it seems to say is that because I grew up in a very impoverished environment, there were several things that happened to me that can shape and mold my entire life until the day I die. It can cause high blood pressure, hypertension, heart disease, and stroke, like we mentioned with HBCU, the heart and the brain. So many people live a life unfulfilled because they grew up in environments that kind of changed their amygdala. When they hear a gun go off, they're no longer afraid because that's the way they grew up, not to be afraid. So their amygdala is somewhat kind of warped. Their sense of survival is predicated on everything has happened to them. They don't know any better. But if you listen to America, they're always talking about picking yourself up by your bootstrap or bootstraps. And I often ask the question, what if a man don't have no shoes? What if a man don't have no straps? What if a man don't have no feet or have any legs to stand on? So how do we justifiably explain that? Goes back to the history that you learn. Your H, your B, your C, and your U. Heart, brain, choices, and being unrelentless. The problem with America right now is that we're self-medicating, but no one wants to take their self-prescribed meds. So I came up with something called meds. I take my meds daily. It is just like it's spelled, meds, M-E-D-S. The M, I say, represents mindfulness, and mindfulness is a simple concept that I tell myself every day that today is a good day for what? A good day. I will not be defeated. I start my day off with prayer because I want to be successful. I take the next letter in the words meds, and it's the E. E represents exercise. I have to exercise the right to be quiet, exercise the right to talk, or exercise my body. And I choose to do all three. We have the power within ourselves to get up and go for a walk. You don't need a gym membership. You have the right to exercise to push back from the table or to refuse to put drugs inside your body. It's your human right to do so. But you have to exercise through what we talked about through the H to the B to the C to the U, which deals with choices. And then we have the D. And the D in meds represents your diet. Most people eat to live. Some claim to live to eat. The reality is you should know what you're eating And oftentimes we don't, because the Food and Drug Administration let people put just about anything in a product for profits. Depending on how deep your pockets is to be able to afford a lobbyist, you can pass people some dog crap if you want to, and they can turn into something that can be considered substance or something that's holistic, when they know good and well it's not good for us. So it's your responsibility to talk about the minerals and the irons within your body and learn about healthy foods that you can eat, things that's ended in the words like berries. But oftentimes we're afraid to sit down and pick up a book, to just take some time out to read, because technology has become so powerful that all we want to do is sit behind a screen, let the screen tell us what to do, manipulate our minds, or playing a video game or what have you. Your diet for ignorance must be stopped. And then the last part is S. And no, we're not talking about sex. Why sex is great, because we already talked about being the top sperm, because you was in a race of your life and you won. Had you come in second place, you would not be listening to what I'm saying. And had I come in second place, I would be making this video for you to watch. But you have to understand why sleep is so important. A nice 6.5, 7 hours of sleep every night is very essential, because when you lay your head down to sleep, you have to really, really understand that your brain is what it's doing is starting to edit the materials that you should keep and getting rid of the stuff that you don't need. And that junk and that gunk is called dross. And dross is simply waste. So every time you lay down at night, your brain's doing the editing and it keeps what you need and get rid of that junk. So stop putting junk inside your head. So when you're going to bed with a head full of junk, it's going to edit the worst junk and keep the other junk. And so I take my meds every day. When I think about getting to sleep in meds, the worst thing coming to my mind is a word called bed. B-E-D. Too many of us spend so much time with that B, and that's blaming other people for our problems. But while you're in the bed, you think you're awake and you're making statements that just don't add up about a lot of things in this world. And sometimes I wish you'd go back to bed, because you're not really awake. You're just existing. The E in the word bed represents you thinking that someone owes you something. You think that you are in a position where you're entitled to something. Nobody owes you nothing. And so oftentimes young folks think they're entitled to their parents' wealth. Well, your parent earned it, not you. And then adults have become accustomed to the same thing. They're entitled to a job. An employer don't have to hire you. And that's why I tell people the best thing for you to do, if you can, is to develop and create your own company so you can be your own boss. And what's risky about being your own boss? I look at risk differently from a millionaire standpoint. That the reality is working for someone else, it's okay. But at the end of the day, do I want to put my livelihood in the hands of another man who may decide one day to let me go? So the greatest risk is not working for oneself, because people can put you out on the street. And so if I'm doing what I'm supposed to do and I don't feel entitled, I'm going to get my job done. And then the D is that thing called deserving. You deserve what you work for. If you're not willing to put the time in to work, you don't deserve absolutely nothing. I have compassion for a lot of people. People who are not in their right mental capacity. Military guys that come home with post-traumatic stress disorder. Babies who are born with all type of diseases or learning deficiencies. Those are the folks we should be able to help. But able-bodied people who sit around blaming other people, it doesn't make sense to me. So I would say to them, rather than talking about your blaming game, your entitlement, and what you deserve, go back to bed and try it again. Well, you know what? I'm tired of talking and preaching, trying to teach people. So I'm just going to go ahead and be quiet. And I'm going to listen to the vibration that the earth is letting me know what's really going on. See, the word listen and the word silent utilize the same letters. And so I'm going to end what I have to say We're talking about a poem by a guy named Rudyard Kipling. He talks about if. No, I'm not going to sit here and recite the poem if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs. Nah, I'm done with if. If you really want to see something fascinating with that particular poem, change if to when and watch how your world change. I'm Zack Richardson, the academic doctor, and this is my story.